In Greek mythology, Hades is the king of the underworld, the guardian of hell, the lord of the kingdom under the earth, the king of the dead. Hades was probably the most feared of the gods, and both Homer and Hesiod describe him as merciless, detestable, and monstrous. His wife was Persephone, whom he abducted to live with him in the underworld, and his symbol is a scepter. Due to his role as lord of the dead, Hades rarely leaves the underworld to visit the earth, so he rarely gets involved in the affairs of mortals. So let's get comfortable and learn a little more about Hades. Hades was one of the sons of the Titans Kronos and Rhea. His brothers were Zeus and Poseidon, and his sisters Hestia, Demeter, and Hera. Kronos, fearing to meet the same fate as his own father, decided to devour all of his children as they were born, so that none of them could challenge him and take his power once they reached adulthood. Thus, the young Hades was swallowed by the powerful Kronos. However, Zeus, another of Kronos and Rhea's children, managed to survive thanks to a trick by his mother, Rhea, and when he reached adulthood, he challenged and defeated his father, freeing all of his brothers from Kronos' belly. Thus, Hades was freed and joined his brother Zeus in his fight against the Titans to take control of the world, the war known as the Titanomachy. The god Hades possessed a unique weapon, forged by the Cyclops in the forges of the earth's depths, a helmet of invisibility. Hidden thanks to the powers of this artifact, he was able to inflict great damage on his enemies. The three male siblings divided the kingdoms they would rule: the sky, the sea, and the underworld. Zeus would rule the sky, Poseidon the sea, and Hades the underworld. Thus, the god Hades became the lord of hell. Although he plays a somewhat lesser role in mythological stories than the other gods, Hades must have inspired fear and awe in much of the Greek population. There are also stories of sacrifices made in honor of Hades, which were performed at night and in which the blood of the victims was allowed to penetrate the earth so that it would reach the god of the underworld. Hades was the only god who did not live on Mount Olympus. Instead, he lived in a dark palace underground. This god also had a helmet made by Hephaestus that made whoever wore it invisible, which is the helmet that Athena used when she fought against Ares in Homer's narrative of the Trojan War in the Iliad and Perseus on his mission to get the head of Medusa. It was believed that the god Hermes guided souls to the Styx lake in the underworld, at which point the ferryman Charon transported them to the gates of Hades, where Cerberus, the ferocious three-headed dog with snakes for a body, guarded against souls escaping or more coming in. To pay the ferryman Charon, the deceased's family placed a coin in the mouth of the deceased. Those who were not buried or who had no way to pay the ferryman were condemned to wander the earth as ghosts. This belief suggests the dark nature of Hades. It was not necessarily a place of torture or suffering, but in many cases it was simply the final resting place of the soul. Upon arriving at the gates, the final destiny of the souls was decided, judging their actions in life. Traditionally, the three judges of souls were Minos, Rhadamanthus, and Aiakos, known for their honorable lives. When it was considered that a soul had led an especially good life, it was first taken to drink from the waters of the Lethe River to forget all that was bad, and then taken to the idyllic Elysian fields. When it was considered that a soul had led a bad life, it fell into the hands of the Furies, who took it to Tartarus, the deepest level of Hades, where it was punished for its misdeeds. The worst souls, those who had offended the gods with their irreverence, were condemned to eternal torment. Some examples of such punishment are Sisyphus, condemned to push a rock uphill forever; Tantalus, who could never quench his thirst; Ocnus, who wove a rope while a donkey ate the other end; the daughters of Danaus, who had to try to fill a sieve with water; and Ixion, who was tied to a wheel that turned endlessly. Despite being a terrifying place for the living, several heroes visited Hades on their adventures, including Hercules, who went to capture Cerberus as his last of his 12 labors; Odysseus, who went to seek the advice of the wise Tiresias; Orpheus, who wanted to find Eurydice; and Theseus and Pirithous, who went to capture Persephone so that the latter could marry him. However, these last two heroes did not have as much luck as the others, as Hades captured them in 2 thrones, and only Theseus would later escape from the underworld when Hercules freed him. Hades made his wife Persephone in a singular way because he wanted to spend the rest of his life with her, so he kidnapped her while she was picking flowers. Persephone was the daughter of the goddess Demeter, patroness of agriculture and fertility. The young, beautiful and carefree woman was walking and picking flowers in the fields of Nysa, in Sicily, when the god Hades watched her from his throne in the realm of the dead. At that moment, the god was taken by the beauty of the young woman and decided to make her his wife. Hades mounted his chariot and spurred his horses to go at full speed towards the fields of Sicily. The young Persephone felt the earth tremble under her feet. In front of her, a huge crack opened from which Hades emerged riding his chariot pulled by infernal horses. Before Persephone could react, the god picked her up and took her back to his underground palace. As the days passed and her daughter did not return home, the goddess Demeter began a long journey in search of her. Despite consulting all the gods and men she encountered, none could give her any news of the whereabouts of the young Persephone. The goddess, furious at the disappearance of her daughter, withdrew her favors from the earth and thus condemned it to eternal winter. The fields stopped producing fruit and humans began to starve. Only the intervention of Zeus, who discovered the presence of Persephone in the underworld, solved the conflict. Through his messenger, the god Hermes. Zeus asked Hades to allow the young woman to return to her mother. The cunning god of the dead, fearing possible reprisals from Zeus, agreed, but devised a stratagem to ensure that Persephone would stay with him. Knowing that anyone, god or mortal, who took any food in hell would have to stay there, Hades offered Persephone a pomegranate before her departure. The young woman, trusting, ate the sweet fruit and tried to return to her mother. However, the laws of hell were very clear to all those who had tasted any food in the realm of the dead. Persephone was bound to the underworld for eternity. To avoid the anger of Demeter, Zeus managed to get Hades and her to reach a compromise. Persephone would spend a third of the year in hell with her husband and would return to earth the rest of the time. Hades and Demeter accepted Zeus' decision. In this way, the ancient Greeks explained the succession of seasons. While Persephone is with Hades, Demeter, saddened by the absence of her daughter, denies her fruit to the earth, causing winter. However, when Persephone returns to her mother, she is filled with joy and blesses mortals with the abundance of spring. I hope you're enjoying the video. If you want to know the story of Poseidon and Zeus, you can see them on my channel. Now let's continue with another myth of the Greek mythology. Thanks for watching. One of the myths told by the Greeks about the god Hades was related to the adventures of the Athenian hero Theseus and his descent into the underworld. Theseus and his companion Pirithous decided to prove their worth by abducting and marrying two daughters of Zeus. While Theseus chose Helen, daughter of Zeus and Leda, Pirithous chose for himself Persephone, daughter of Zeus and Demeter. According to some versions of the myth, Theseus succeeded in his goal. He abducted Helen while she was still a child and imprisoned her in his palace in Athens. After this, he decided to collaborate with his friend Pirithous in achieving the goal. The two friends descended together into the underworld to abduct Persephone. However, the god of the dead knew their intentions to abduct his wife, so, pretending to offer them a warm welcome in his home, he asked them to sit on two thrones. At the moment when the two heroes sat down, huge snakes emerged from the ground and coiled around the two companions, imprisoning them. Other sources say that the hero was imprisoned by sitting on a rock to rest and not being able to get up from it, while Pirithous was dragged to the depths of hell by the Furies. Although Theseus was later rescued by Heracles, or also known as Hercules, in one of his 12 tasks, Pirithous was trapped in the underworld, condemned for all eternity for the impiety of having offended a god trying to abduct his wife. The god Hades played a particularly important role in the myth of the poet Orpheus. After losing his beloved Eurydice to the bite of a venomous snake, Orpheus, desperate, decided to descend into the underworld and plead with the Lord of the Dead to return the soul of his wife. The road to the underworld was not easy for a simple mortal. The poet had to convince the ferryman Charon to help him cross the river that separated the world of the living from that of the dead in his boat, and, once there, sleep with the sound of his lyre to the gigantic Cerberus, the guardian of the gates of the realm of shadows. After overcoming these obstacles on his journey, Orpheus managed to get the god Hades to receive him in his palace. Knowing that the king of the underworld was implacable when it came to the fate of souls, Orpheus decided to use the only weapon in which he knew he had absolute mastery, his lyre. With his singing and the sound of this musical instrument, Orpheus managed to soften the heart of Hades. The god, moved by the beauty of Orpheus's singing, granted him permission to return to the world of the living, taking Eurydice's soul with him. However, he placed a condition on the poet: on his way out of hell, he must not look back at any moment, or Eurydice's soul would be forever trapped in the world of the dead. Filled with joy, Orpheus set out on the return journey. However, soon doubts about the truth of Hades' words assailed him. The poet, distrustful, looked back for just an instant, just to see how Eurydice's soul was dragged back to hell. Hades had carried out his threat. The young woman would remain in the underworld for all eternity. Although Orpheus lost the opportunity to resurrect Eurydice in this way, their destinies would be reunited in the future. After the definitive loss of his beloved, Orpheus devoted himself to wandering through the fields, rejecting all contact with women. For this reason, he was killed by a mob of furious Maenads, who felt scorned by the poet. In this way, Orpheus returned to descend to the world of the dead, where he could be reunited with Eurydice, from whom he would never be separated. Unlike other gods, Hades was not a promiscuous deity intended to be carried away by sexual passion. Apart from his conjugal relationships with Persephone, the ancient sources only mention two amorous escapades of this god. The nymph Ment, who lived on the banks of the Cocytus River, suffered an attempted rape at the hands of the king of the underworld. However, he was unable to complete the act because Persephone, jealous, turned the nymph into a mint plant. The nymph Lus, who in turn had also been a victim of this god's sexual passion, was turned into a white willow, either as punishment from the jealous Persephone or at the initiative of Hades himself. Hades never had any offspring, possibly because the Greeks considered death to be incapable of generating any life. In comparison with other deities, the cult of Hades was never very widespread in the ancient world. We know that to win his favor it was necessary to make the sacrifice of black animals, especially if this was not their usual color: goats, sheep. A place of special cult to this god were the caves, considered as entrances to the underworld. Places therefore sacred because of their liminal character between the world of the living and the world of the dead. It was considered that some metals were especially related to the god Hades because they had been gestated in the depths of the earth, in places close to the abodes of this god. An example of these infernal metals is lead, very used in ancient black magic in the form of tablets and sheets on which all kinds of curses and damaging spells were written. And I hope you liked the video. Remember to subscribe to see all the stories of Greek, Egyptian, Celtic mythology and from all over the world. So see you later.